Hello, my name is Nate Dye, and this is my DDS journey. I am in the process of starting a digital product company that is going to teach brainstorming and innovation techniques, and I wanted to document this journey and kind of present it forward for all of you to see. And I recently overcame a couple of obstacles specifically that I wanted to share with everybody. So kind of the background before we jump into what you're going to see here is I'm doing this as kind of a big, hopefully a win-win. I believe that by teaching, you actually end up learning a lot more yourself, and so this is going to help me even further kind of solidify my ideas in my own process. And I also suspect that there are a bunch of people that were like me, where you are feeling stuck and you don't know exactly which way you want to go. You have a ton of ideas potentially and you feel overwhelmed, or you just don't really know how to put the pieces together. And so I'm going to present to you the way that I put some of these pieces together, and I think you're hopefully going to find it pretty interesting and hopefully very informative. But before, what have I done up to this point already? So prior to us being here, I've actually done a ton of research, and I plan on using Facebook ads. So I've researched a whole bunch of Facebook interests, and I did everything surrounding for my niche, which dealt with things like authors and books and associations, things like that. I also looked for brands, which were things like big brainstorming brands or anything from Tony Buzan, things like that. So I have brands in there. So I've done all that research beforehand, and I not only wanted interests for Facebook, but I also wanted psychographic info, which tells me kind of people's pain and what their questions were, things they liked and didn't like. I also have been considering kind of what I think my ideal customer is, and using the format that we've already kind of discussed in the Next Level Mastermind, it was someone who is already learning about innovation and is actively trying to apply it to their situation. In this case, I see a lot of parallels between the topic of teaching innovation and the same challenges that Ryan would have had when he talked about teaching memory with his Rocket Memory course. And so in that way, what I have really tried to do is say, okay, I know that at some point I'm going to need to probably focus on one particular niche or one particular industry, but I'm not particularly drawn to one or the other right now. I don't necessarily want to jump right back into the marketing industry and start teaching innovation there, although I could. So what I decided was those people who are already actively involved in the discussion of innovation online, reading articles about it, following magazines, reading books about it, I want to see what the DDS reveals about who they are, and then from that I will pick and kind of direct myself in the direction that I want to go, based on kind of who responds most strongly. So that's kind of my thought process right now. And I have already put together my DDS form and questions, and I followed what was described in the Ask book to a T, so I didn't really deviate from that very much. My hope for you is that this inspires you, that most importantly you get going, and that in the end you have a map of exactly what you think you need to do to go to actually run that DDS survey, map it out, and get going. For me, I am basically running Facebook ads to a landing page, to the DDS, and then I have an email sequence that is going to follow up after that. And that's basically what we're going to talk about today, is the development of that thing. One word of warning, though, that I do have to give you is in this presentation I kind of had to manage teaching the aspects of the deep dive survey and how I'm implementing it and what I'm doing, and then teaching just enough in order to illustrate how I applied it to my own business. So I hope that that balance comes out okay. I didn't want to spend too much time on this because, again, I need to get my own business up and running, but I did want to share these kind of insights with all of you, so I hope I struck that balance. Okay, so what are you going to see? Well, essentially, what I just did in about 1 hour with only 6 pages of a notebook and 0 technology, I was able to basically body slam the overwhelm that I had, most importantly get unstuck, and finally I had kind of a comprehensive map on how I was going to get from the idea that I had and actually get to the actual funnel that I wanted to have for my deep dive survey. And so that's what I hope comes through here, and that's what I'm going to show you. That's kind of my promise. My deep dive survey funnel, that's what you're going to see. And again, this is all raw and real. So I took pictures of the notebook notes that I took, and I dropped them into some PowerPoint, and now I'm going to start kind of marking them up. This is going to give me a chance to kind of review what I've done and solidify some of the ideas that I had, as well as hopefully share it with you. But again, this is not polished. This is one take on the PowerPoint, and I really don't know how long this is going to go. I hope not too long. And so with no further ado, here goes. Okay, so my mind, the way that it works, the first thing that I wanted to do was, I was really stuck on the giveaway. I didn't like the idea of having to put together kind of some kind of PDF or ebook. I didn't like that. So I just started wanting to brainstorm kind of what is the topic that I can talk about, and how can I structure this to kind of give something away? Because again, I'm somewhat of an outsider to this innovation niche itself. I've bought a few courses. I've experienced kind of innovation in my own professional life separately from all of this, but I'm not as in tune with this market as I might be, internet marketing, where I spend an incredible amount of time. So step number 1, I really just started writing out ideas. The biggest thing I think that we do to ourselves is we let all of these ideas kind of rumble around in our head, and I went super low tech. I pulled out my favorite pen, I pulled out my notebook, and I just started writing out ideas. So the first one that I just said was, hey, how can I help people brainstorm better? Okay, that was all right. It's not overly compelling, but it's a start. Then I went and said, well, what is the best method for brainstorming, and what are those ideas? All right. And then number 3 is the one that really got me. I started thinking, okay, what is the secret behind all breakthrough ideas? And what I'm going to argue about that, or the idea that I'm going to put forward, is that solving the right problem is really the key thing. And this goes back to kind of what my own thoughts are about brainstorming, which we'll get to in a second. I have a little process, and that name, 6x6, actually comes from another guy named Dan Rome, and he wrote an incredible series of books, one of which is called The Back of the Napkin. But he calls that process 6x6, and is a problem-solving structure that he shows. I will need to come up with another name for it, and I've made some adjustments to it as I apply it to innovation. But essentially, that is the crux of what I'm going to be presenting. And essentially, we're applying it across these 6 factors. It's who, what, where, when, how, and why. And there are little visual elements that each one of these have. And this will be another thing that I teach within this giveaway. And I want to wrap all of this up inside of a story. And the story is one of the most incredible that I've recently read, and it is about a baby warmer that was created to solve one particular problem, and that was, it was to solve infant death in India. And that is a story that I will be taking people through as they learn how to apply this tool. How I frame all of that will be coming up in a few slides. So that piece right there, number 3, really helped me figure out, okay, this is the idea that I've been rolling around in my head for a while, and it is something of value that I can give out, and it may or may not specifically hit on the exact problem that they have with brainstorming or innovation right now, but it is valuable enough that it stands on its own. And once I get their DDS information, once I get the results of that survey, I then can start kind of tweaking all of this. But as someone who has been involved in innovation projects and that deals with solving very complex problems, I can assure you that the number one thing that will set you on a course for progress and success is that you start defining the problem, that you actually figure out the problem that you're trying to solve before you do the brainstorming. And that's how I'm going to put all that together. the giveaway I talk about down here is I explore a couple different ideas. I talk about it could be a one-page worksheet. I talk about that it could be a series of emails. And on the next slide, I believe I actually settle on what it's going to turn out to be. So let's go ahead and go to that. Okay, so here I start talking about what the email sequence could be. And I start listing out what day 1 could be and day 0 could be. And the idea that I essentially come up with is if we go back to these elements of who, what, where, when, how, and why, and I'm going to wrap this up in this story about how they invented these baby warmers to curb infant death in India. I'm actually going to teach each one of these elements over a 6-day period. So day 1 is going to be who, and then when, and then where, and so on and so forth. So that is the idea that began to kind of incubate as I began to kind of sequence out how I wanted to essentially present these emails. So that led me to say, well, why don't I just map it out in a storyline? And this particular wave, as we see here, this is a way that I have begun to think about stories. Separately, most people are familiar with kind of the circle of the hero's journey, where we have the start, we have the passage into the underworld, we have the moment of darkness, and then we have the return back to his normal life, but he's changed. Well, that hero's journey model, it was helpful, and it is an extremely good model to become familiar with storytelling, but that model of making a circle like that, it didn't help me necessarily really understand how I wanted to structure stories. And actually, oddly enough, making a wave just like that did help me quite a bit. And so what do the elements of the wave represent? Well, before this first crest here is what I call the beginning, or the stage setting. And this is life before your first attempt at something. And so in this case, I have this story about how these students got together and we're going to tackle this problem of curbing infant death in India. And originally they came up and they did some research and they got some data, and they came up with this idea that what they needed to do was just build a better incubator. And so that's what they thought they were going to do. And then on their first little trip, they go to India and they make a very shocking discovery that basically changes everything. And they learn some things there that completely invalidates the premise that what we really needed was a better incubator. And they realize that that's not the case. They don't need a better incubator. What they actually need is something quite different. And that is the cliffhanger on day 1 that they get. And then every day after that, we have another aspect of the story where we talk about the who, and then the what, and then the where, and how I apply this tool. And we're going to take kind of each application of the tool and we're going to spread it out over the 6 days. And essentially the major premise that I'm teaching is, if you start with this original question, which is how can we reduce infant deaths, and you end up at the end with a much better question, which is how can we prevent hypothermia on the way to the hospital. And as they learn in the story that that was the real killer of the babies, it was this transit from the village to the hospital that was the problem. And so they actually invent a very interesting tool in order to help with that. So that story and that lesson within the construct of this 6x6 tool is what I will teach, and that is the giveaway. So the form and structure that that's going to take is really just a video and me kind of diagramming out just like I'm doing for you now, which is great because I don't really like making PDFs, and so this caters to that kind of strength, and I think that this is much more interactive anyways. Okay. So now that once I began thinking about, okay, what are the emails that I'm going to have and how is that going to flow, I felt like I was making progress there. My mind jumped back and I started thinking about, okay, well, what's the video that I'm going to make that's going to pre-frame all of this, right? So in this case, what we have is, so we have some idea about the Facebook ad, although I'm going to get to that more specifically in a second. I went to the landing page, and then I went to essentially what that email sequence is going to be following. And since I mapped out the giveaway, which we'll just call GA, and I mapped out what the emails were, which is going to be the 6x6 given out over 6 days, my mind now jumps back and says, okay, so essentially, if the landing page was going to be the DDS, I should say we jumped back here to this video, that after they take this little survey, what's the video that they land on? What's the framing of that going to be, and what's the ideas that I'm going to put forward? So for that, I roughed out just some very rough ideas. I didn't go too much into detail. There were just some very unique thoughts that I had about how I wanted to frame it and what I wanted to present to them. And so in this case, I'm going to be telling them that we're going to take a journey together, which is quite true. We're going to be taking this journey together over the course of the 6 days, learning about this very interesting story of how this group of people actually used a very creative process to solve a very important problem. I'm going to play the role of the facilitator, and they're going to follow along and apply the tool just as this group did. This was another key point that I wanted to capture, as I said that I want you to set aside your goal for the moment. So whatever you're working on right now, I want you to set aside, and let's work together on how to better understand the way that they curbed infant death in India. And you're going to be better suited to go back to your own problem and apply this to it in a much better way. I reemphasize the incredible story that they're going to learn, and then I have some ideas about, in the end, what you're going to get out of it if you go ahead and follow all the way through to the end. So I just wanted to capture some rough ideas on what the video script was going to be. And again, not getting too bogged down in the details. It's just these were ideas I had. I didn't want to lose them. And now I kind of have much more clarity about how it's going to work out now that I've kind of put them out there on the piece of paper. So next I said, well, all right, if I figured out the giveaway, so let's kind of just keep track of where we are here. I figured out what the giveaway was going to be, and the giveaway is going to be essentially this 6x6 technique. And the way that that technique is going to be framed is that behind every big idea actually is first identifying what the right problem is. That's really the key. And so that is the giveaway, and that is the promise. In this case, next I have the email sequence that I figured out what I was going to do, and it's going to be actually the 6 elements every day. And I figured out the story that I'm going to have, where I'm going to tell and illustrate this learning lesson. So now I come back and I have the video where I'm going to kind of introduce all these topics to them. And I have the landing page now with my deep dive survey question on it. So I wanted to get to next, working backwards, is what is the Facebook ad going to be? What is the different hooks and the headlines that I'm going to use? So I think the thing that's important to come out of this is new ideas are going to come to you when you start writing. I think you just need to pull out a piece of paper and pull out a pen and start writing out your ideas. And in all of this, when I think about these concepts, I think about it in terms of what it's ultimately going to be presented. And it's ultimately going to be presented in some structure that involves a traffic source that leads to some sort of landing page. That could be an article where you have more information on it. It could be a landing page where it just has a headline and an opt-in box, but it's going to have some sort of landing page, and then you're going to have something that happens after that landing page. When you talk about funnels or you talk about trying to do something online, those 3 steps are very common, and if your 3 steps are different, that's fine. Just label them out, just draw them out just like that, and start figuring out piece by piece kind of what you need to do at any given step. And so for me, this is the process that I took in order to figure that out, which I'm trying to capture here, and I hope that I do. But what was interesting here for me is once I started writing these ideas out on paper, I came up with another idea. And that idea is this. I needed a way to separate out what most people would think of as brainstorming, and I needed to come up with a way to say brainstorming is going to let you down 100% of the time unless you do this. And I needed to come up with what that was going to be. Why is my technique better than what everybody else is doing? And so this is the visual that I came up with in order to do that. And that idea is what I kind of like the idea of now is calling it the 1090 principle, something like that maybe. But essentially here's the idea. Current brainstorming techniques tell you that you need to just start generating a whole bunch of ideas. And when you do that, what's going to happen is 90% of those ideas, so all of these ideas except that last one, 90% of those ideas are going to be ideas related to the wrong problem. They're going to be related to the problem that you are not supposed to be solving. But only 10% of those ideas are going to be focused on the right problem that leads to a really good solution. Well, there actually is a better way. And what I say is, if we actually figure out what is the square peg that we're trying to put in the round hole, essentially what is the right problem that we should be solving, then 90% of your solutions come out to be related to the right problem and 10% of them become irrelevant, right? You have much better ideas to choose from when you start focusing on the right problem. And so the problem statement really is the key to a good brainstorming session. And one of the other maxims that I kind of always live my life by is that a problem well stated is half solved. I love that statement. A problem well stated is half solved. And so that truth is going to essentially be the gateway into my entire introductory idea into my approach into innovation. That you've got to nail the problem first, then you start coming up with good ideas, which is essentially the essence of the deep dive survey, right? We are getting information from them about what problems they want to have solved, not us thinking what the right problem is to solve. So, I have some different headline ideas. I write a lot of headlines, I write a lot of copy, and so I have a ton of structures that I'll fall back on. I've got a ton of different swipe files that I'll be going through, but I just started writing some out, exploring different ideas and different ways that I could put this together. Again, I just wanted some of those creative juices flowing. And let's see, I don't think there's anything else I wanted to say there. There's definitely enough doodle on that screen. Okay, here's, I think, another useful structure, and I think this is the last page of our little format. And after all of those ideas, after I've explored everything from what the ad is going to look like, out to the landing page and what that headline is going to look like, to the video that they see afterwards and what the framing and what the script is, all the way down to what all the emails are. Once I've done all of that and I have all of those rough ideas kind of mapped out, I usually come back to something that looks like this. You kind of saw me draw this before, but I have some sort of traffic source right here, and that's going to go to some sort of landing page. There's something that's going to happen after the landing page. There's going to be some type of email follow-up, and then in this case I'm not quite sure what happens afterwards. As I run down these columns, I jot out just basic ideas that relate to that Facebook ad, so I don't really get off track. So this is essentially my funnel map. This top part up here, okay, this top part right here, this is the overall big picture, and it is the strategy for my whole, it's my strategy overall, moving from, beginning of traffic source all the way over to opt-in. And it's also the big picture concept of what my ad wanted to look like. What was the idea of the ad? What was the main hook? What was the main headline? So I can jot this down very quickly, and this is a great frame of reference as I'm working on this in the coming days. I don't lose sight of kind of the direction that I was headed. So if I'm ever off course, I just come right back here and it lets me know what I need to do. The other thing that's important, and what is kind of frustrating when you start building funnels, is funnels are usually built backwards. So you think about them one way, but you actually build them backwards, because you need this email list to set up the opt-in form, and you need this link because it's going to go on the landing page, and you need this landing page link because it's going to be used in the ad, and so on and so forth. So this helps you keep kind of everything straight, regardless of whether you're moving from the traffic source up to the final call to action, or whether you're moving from that call to action and actually building it backwards. Underneath the line, what this represents is it represents kind of a to-do list of sorts, things that I know I'm going to have to do. So I kind of start in my mind thinking, okay, do I know where that thing is? Do I need to go dig out that tool again? I just start putting my mind. So this is conceptual thought, and this is actual to do. So now I have a strategic and a tactical map of what this funnel needs to look like. And if I ever get lost, or I ever figure out, well, what do I need to do? Where was I at? What did I get done? What don't I have done yet? This helps me stay back on track. So for the email sequence I see here, I need a video for each day. I'm debating about whether I'm going to do that or whether I just write out it in the email. I'm favoring the video. I got to write out each one of those emails. I got to record the video, and I have to make the list within Aweber and make that form so I can put that on the appropriate pages that come before it in the funnel. And then I have other to-do lists for each one of these things. But to always maintain momentum and to always make sure that I'm moving forward, I don't get lost in all of these details. They're written down. I know where they are. But now I know what is my must-have in order to get started. Well, I need an ad, I need a landing page, I need some videos, I need one video actually, I need to just make the email list, and I need some policy pages to put on that site to kind of round that out. And that is it. So now I can attack this to-do list, I can attack these things with all possible dispatch, because I have all of this other head trash kind of mapped out and put out on paper. And I think that that really is the value of what was kind of these 6 pages that I put together in order to be able to confidently get to this point to say, all right, I know what I'm giving away. I know how I'm going to present that over time in these emails. I know the story that I'm going to use to present all of these things. I know how I'm going to divide up that story and how I'm going to create loops and open new loops and do all that good stuff. And that leads back into, I know what the Facebook ad is going to look like. And I've already done the work to know what my actual DDS form questions are going to be. So now I feel comfortable and confident that I can put all these things together and test it out in the real world and see if it actually works. All right, so some final thoughts. I've been going for almost a half an hour now. I need to cut this off. All right, so ultimately, I hope this helped. Even as I'm presenting this now, and the teacher inside of me sees, some things that were kind of jumbled and that may not make sense to you as you're trying to absorb all of this information. But ultimately, this, I think, is kind of a process that you can follow. What I was getting stuck on was really a couple of things. One was, if I don't have a list, what's the topic that I'm going to teach? Okay, what can I give away? And in what form was that giveaway going to happen? And so how did I get out of this kind of, self-defeating loop where I wasn't really getting anything done? Well, the first one was I just started writing down ideas of what topics I could teach. I felt most passionate about one of those, which is this idea that a problem well stated is half solved. Okay. From that, I said, well, that's easy. I know this story, and I can use that story as an analogy on how to use this 6x6 tool. And I can spread that out over 6 emails. So that allowed me then to reverse engineer all the way back to everything that I needed from that point. Well, I'm going to need a video that tells them after they take their deep dive survey, it's going to be a video that tells them, hey, this is what we're going to do. You're going to get an email every day, and we're going to take this journey, and this journey is going to be fun, and it's going to be exciting, and at the end of it, you're going to learn X. And so stick around to learn what X is. And the real cliffhanger that I'm holding on to is exactly how they solved the problem of the infants dying, of the newborns dying, which of course is a good news story. From this point, I know that I need this video. I know before that I need the landing page headline and how that's going to be framed. And I know that I need an ad. And so working backwards from all this, I now had the structure that I needed in order to fill in all of those blanks. So if you are struggling with your deep dive survey and this is resonating with you, what I would do is step one, I would just start writing out ideas of what you could teach, realizing that that is an imperfect process, realizing that you don't know if that's exactly what people will want to learn or not, but make it manageable, make it valuable, and if you can, try to wrap up the teaching of it in some type of story. If you want to use the exact structure that I'm using, then the actual delivery of the product or the delivery of that giveaway actually happens over a course of emails, over some successive days, and they could, if you want, link back to a video. I'm pretty comfortable with video and I'm pretty comfortable with talking, so that's probably going to suit my strengths. If yours is just straight email, send it in straight email. Do not get wrapped up in the idea of an ebook where you have to have fancy graphics and you got to have all these other gee whiz bang things in it and it's got to be 30 pages long and something else. Just don't do that. That bogs me down. I can't stand the thought of having to put one of those things together. So this structure in this format to me is much faster to execute. So hopefully this little summary has given you enough direction to go. Think of these things at kind of a meta level. Don't necessarily look at exactly what I did, but think about what each one of those 6 pages kind of represented. I went from basically, like I said here, I went from ideas, and those ideas led to topics that I thought that I could teach. I then thought, okay, how do I deliver the teaching of that topic? Okay, how do I make that topic especially relevant and exciting for my audience? So if you have any questions about what I did, please post them in the comments below. If you have feedback, especially, please post that in the comments below. And if you like this and you like this sort of presentation, I can certainly document all of these things, and I would encourage you to stay tuned for the results of this ad and this entire process. Maybe I'm flying high and maybe it's a total flop, who knows? But the key is this, the key is to start putting things out in the real world and take real action, because it is much better to get feedback on real action than it is to get feedback on some type of thought process that you've had as you're sitting here kind of chin stroking and thinking about, well, should I do A versus B? This is all hypothetical, and at that point feedback there is really just kind of opinions, and it doesn't help you move forward. Feedback, okay, on action taken is much better, and that is what we want to get to. So I have mapped out how I'm going to execute my deep dive survey enough for me to take action. I will get some kind of results, and I will come back and I will share those. But for now, post your questions and any feedback you have in the comments section, and I look forward to hearing them. I hope that this was time well spent. Again, my name is Nate Dye, and I will talk to all of you later.